At one point you had told me you trained in France. Um, I don't know how long that was, but what was that experience like, and did that shape how your judo is as well?
Oh yeah, that was very formative. I trained in France a couple times. One at the Paris Institut du Judo, and then did a camp as well in the Vendée and like western kind of north of Bordeaux. French players are renowned for being very tough, very inventive. Um, yeah, that was those were that was the rough awakening to what judo can be. You know, the judo is known as the gentle art or the you know the gentle way, but it's really you're just stopping short of killing someone. That's what that meant back in the day. And the French embody that. I mean, they're brutal players. They're very very tough and very good. So that was sort of a gauntlet. And then I went from France to train in South Korea for a few months. I actually spent more time in South Korea, but that was formative in a different way. They were um, that was the most training I'd done. We were training 3 times a day, and yeah, the whole experience was very formative. Very different styles to play, but also both very kind of inventive and styles that are created just to kind of thwart a specific opponent. Like the Korean style kind of is born from fighting the Japanese and trying to beat the Japanese and focusing on that. So each style had something different. Each training method was kind of different. But traveling and playing judo, I think, is one of the best experiences you can have wherever you can travel and play and tie on a belt.
Yeah, how did you get those opportunities of being able to travel abroad and be able to train with these people? Was it like having a connection of knowing someone, or?
Yeah, knew somebody who knew somebody. That's kind of the neat thing about the judo world is that our superstars are somewhat accessible sometimes if you know someone who's a good friend. So one of my coaches growing up was friends with Stefan Trudeau and kind of introduced me there. And so I got to actually live with him for a bit and train. And he kind of gave me some pointers and helped me. And then training in South Korea was kind of the same thing. One of our former students, his professor from Korea just happened to be visiting and happened to stop by one day. And even though when I went up to talk to him, he was kind of basically said to one of our Korean students, like, "Who is this young kid talking to me?" But then watched, and I was very humbled that he liked what I was teaching that day and thought that it was, significant enough to like, or impressive enough that he kept coming back and kind of like really worked with our students. And he was a sixth degree, and he was an Olympic coach and professor at Korea National Sport University. So very, very established, but he kind of just kept coming back and working with our students and would even let our lower ranks throw him, which for an Asian, coral belt, like that's a red and white belt, that's not common. So he was very kind to our students, and basically my dad told him that, hey, he's got an English degree. You want to bring him back over to Korea and he can teach your guys some English and you guys can teach him some judo. And that was a great experience. I lived at Korea National Sport University for 3 months and did the most um, thorough training I've ever done. Where we were up on the track at 6:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock, 6:30, track workout for an hour and a half. Then we'd have judo for 2 hours in the afternoon. Then we would have 2 hours of either strength training or technical training in the evening. So it was training like it was a full time job. And yeah, I came back in the best shape of my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a really neat experience. I was very fortunate.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can imagine like 3 times a day. There's no way you're not going to be in the best shape of your life and feel like your judo is just absolutely at its peak.
Yeah, we had when I first showed up, because when you arrive and you're there for training, like you go to practice that day, um, or the very next day. And so the next day I went and we had the army team, the Korean National Army team was there, and they were maulers. They were just brutal. And then we, you know, one week we would have the Korea national team. So Kim Jai Bom, like these guys who I was watching, you know, stars that I was watching, I was playing with. Um, and to watch people like that, you know, he would go when the Korean national team came through, it was straight to Rondori. And it was 2 hours of our warm up was Newaza Rondori for 45 minutes to an hour. And then we did Tachiwaza for, you know, maybe it was an hour. And there was no Uchikomi, there was no step, there was just right to get into business.
Wow.
And watching like Kim Jai Bum, who was at that time, I believe, world champion. He wasn't Olympic champion yet, um, but he would go every single, you know, for 2 hours. He was out there every single. He was taping something up or adjusting something. Like he was just constant. To see that kind of endurance, you know, to see Olympic world champion endurance like that and technique was, you know, it's a once in a lifetime experience. And I get to do it a couple of times, so it was really cool.